Good evening, everyone. The pizza is available in the back, so please help yourself to some pizza and some soda. Good evening, everyone. We're gonna start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second community conversation for the Kinneytown Dam Removal Project. My name is Kaylee Mahalko, and I'm one of the two community liaisons on this project. So again, thank you for coming out tonight. We'll be going through a little bit differently than we did last time. So if you were there, you went through the full presentation, and all the information is available on our website. But tonight we are going to start again with just some background information, get everybody on the same page, know where this project started, where it currently is, and any of the updates that have been happening since the last meeting. And then we're going to open the floor up for Q&A, and the pizza will be back there all evening, so please feel free to get up anytime and have some pizza, have some drinks, and yeah, again, welcome. I'm going to introduce my fellow community liaison, Jeff. You want to say a few words?
Nice to meet you all. Thank you for coming to the meeting.
Microphone.
Right here. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for coming to the meeting. My name is Jeff. I live in Ansonia. I'm a community liaison with the Dam Removal Project. If anybody here has any questions in general for the project, you can address them to me or Kaylee, or address them specifically about the stuff that's getting brought up tonight. Thank you.
All right, and first, I'm going to pass this over to Aaron.
All right. Good evening. Good to see a lot of you back again. So as Kaylee said, I know a lot of this is going to be review for some of you, the ones that you were here at the last meeting, but we do have a lot of people that are new. We have people online watching as well, so we'd like to give everyone at least the base background information. So we'll go through a little bit faster than we did last time, but it's a lot of the same information at the front of this. So I am the Environmental Planning Director at the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. I'm joined here by some NVCOG staff. We have Craig Stevenson over here in the back, Christine O'Neill, signing people in over here, Desiree Blanchard walking around the camera, Ricardo Rodriguez is right over here, and our Executive Director, Rick Dunn, is in the back. So we're overseeing the Kinneytown project. NVCOG is one of 9 councils of government in the state. And we're set up to conduct regional planning, help coordinate municipal efforts for our member communities, support municipal planning, and provide services and assistance to our towns as needed. Our board consists of the chief elected officials of our 19 member towns, which are right on the screen here. So we work a lot on transportation issues, land use issues, and environmental planning. And we assist our member municipalities really in all of those areas. The Naugatuck River is really central to the revitalization of our region. It's a great success. I think all of you that have lived around the Naugatuck River understand that it was one of the most polluted rivers not that long ago. It's made an enormous comeback. So it's really central to a lot of the planning work that we do, and a lot of the communities are really embracing the river as a focal point of their revitalization. So I will hand it over now to our partners at Save the Sound to talk a little bit about their organization.
Yeah, exactly. So Save the Sound is we're a regional environmental organization. We're headquartered in New Haven, Connecticut, but we have an office also in Larchmont. We focus on climate legislation, land protection, or open space protection, protecting water quality in Long Island Sound, and ecological restoration. So this project falls into our ecological restoration division. I'm here also with Anthony Allen, who's helping to assign people in, and I have a host of colleagues that are also helping out on this project that aren't here tonight.
All right, so I'm just gonna give a little background. First I'm gonna sort of set the stage here, make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, where we're talking about. So the Kinneytown Dam is right between downtown Seymour and downtown Ansonia. So at the top of the screen is downtown Seymour. At the bottom of the screen is Ansonia. Behind Kinneytown Dam is an impoundment. So water from the river is backed up all the way up to about Broad Street, the Broad Street Bridge in Seymour, right out here. So at times, depending on the water level, you know, it's impounded all the way up to right behind this building here. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see some of the features of the dam. So again, at the top of the screen is Kinneytown Dam. Right next to the dam is the Unit 1 powerhouse, or the Seymour powerhouse, that we'll refer to it as Unit 1 powerhouse throughout the presentation. And right next to that powerhouse is the fish ladder that was built in the 90s. On the east side of the river, right here, there's a canal gatehouse that once regulated water into a canal that flows all the way down into Coe Pond in Ansonia, and at one time all the way down into downtown Ansonia. Right at the southern end of Coe Pond is the Unit 2 powerhouse. That's about it for that slide. So the facility, the Kinneytown Dam facility, actually consists of two dams. So there's the Kinneytown Dam, which is a large concrete structure that many of you have seen from Route 8. But there's a secondary over a mile long dam that separates the canal from the rail and the river. So the northern part of this, actually, the rail line runs on top of the dam. But in Ansonia, the rail sort of goes down behind the dam, and the dam, you know, is actually up above the rail line, and that impounds Coe Pond. And that's what it looks like there. So what you're looking at here this is actually a dam, and that is above the rail, and both of those are well above the river, especially at the southern end of Coe Pond. So Kinneytown Dam was originally constructed in the mid-1800s to divert water from the Naugatuck River and deliver it into downtown Ansonia, where the water was used to drive equipment and factories throughout the city. In the early 1900s, when factories began electrifying their machinery, the Kinneytown Dam system was retrofitted to meet that demand for electricity. So the American Brass Company constructed a hydroelectric facility, and this is the one in Ansonia. This is what we call Unit 2 now. Around the early 1900s, it was constructed. So that provided electricity to the Ansonia Copper and Brass facility, which is basically right next door. And then fast forward to the 1980s, Atlantic Richmond Corporation, or ARCO, owned the property at the time, and they added electric generation at Unit 1 in Seymour. So this second hydroelectric facility was installed in about 1983, and the intent was to sell electricity generated from both of those powerhouses into the grid. So hydroelectric facilities like these are regulated by the FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And as a small facility, Kinneytown was granted a license exemption in 1983 to operate this facility. It was rated for 2.3 megawatts total energy production, which it never quite produced that much, probably, but that's what it was rated at. So it's called the license exemption, but it's not really. It's really basically a mini license. So there's a lot of things that FERC requires license exemption holders to do. So a few of those are, so they have to operate the facility, they have to maintain the facility, and in this case, there was a requirement that when state and federal regulators called on them to install fish passage at the dam, that they had to do it. So in the 1990s, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, or at the time Department of Environmental Protection, began implementing the Naugatuck River Restoration Plan. And as part of that, they were basically removing barriers to fish passage all along the river. As part of the implementation of that plan, regulators called on the dam owners to install fish passage, and this fish ladder was built in 1998 and 1999, and it opened in 1999. The fish ladder was never really effective, and it pretty much ceased functioning altogether around 2013 when the Unit 2 powerhouse in Ansonia stopped operating. That basically threw off the flows at the dam that this fish ladder required to pass fish. So this is the decline in effectiveness was reflected in fish counts that DEP were doing at the fish ladder every year. And the potential to pass fish at this ladder was further dealt another blow in 2020 when the Unit 1 powerhouse in Ansonia or in Seymour went offline with no plan to restore it. So currently there's no way to control flow through or around the dam, and the ladder is completely non-functional at this time. So we also know that it wasn't working because Kevin Zach, who is a really enthusiastic river lover, basically, he spends a lot of time researching and doing documentation of the river. So he's been looking above and below Kinneytown Dam for years and years, and he's been documenting fish stuck below the dam, dead and dying fish at the base, and a lack of migratory fish above the dam. So he shared his concerns with NVCOG staff. We've been talking about this for a long time. He also shared it with our CEOs that are on our board, and they've really made it a priority to deal with this issue. And it's really is one of our regional priorities for our agency. So why is this a big deal that fish can't pass at Kinneytown Dam? Well, like I said, obstacles have been removed all along the Naugatuck River, and Kinneytown is basically the only thing preventing migratory fish from accessing miles and miles of restored habitat all the way up to the Plume and Atwood Dam in Thomaston. But fish, fish are not the only things prevented from accessing the river by Kinneytown Dam. Like I said before, the Naugatuck River is really a huge success story. And all along the river, with wildlife returning, people are now fishing, boating, and recreating all along the river. And the Naugatuck River, like I said, has really become central to the revitalization of the valley. So, the size of the Kinneytown Dam facility and its location is really blocking the communities of Ansonia and Seymour from fully realizing this type of activity. And the lack of fish passages is also really preventing all the investments that have been made upstream from being fully realized. So for 175 years, Kinneytown Dam served a purpose. Drove industry in the lower valley and later provided electricity. Since 2020, however, the facility has produced no electricity and provided no benefit, and it's continued to cause negative impact. Find my cursor here. Okay. So, in 2020 and 2021, we talked with the dam owner, we talked with prospective buyers of the facility, and they all agreed that the facility is no longer commercially viable as a hydropower generator. The cost of bringing the facility back online and in compliance with its FERC license exemption far outweighs the revenue that it could ever produce selling power to the grid. At this point, the owner has effectively abandoned the facility and has told FERC that they do not have the ability to make even minor repairs. So right now, the facility is just continuing to fall further and further into disrepair. So, with all of this in mind, our coalition, Us Save the Sound, and others began looking into the feasibility of removing Kinneytown Dam. So now I'm going to hand it over to Paul here, who's going to talk about why we think removing Kinneytown Dam is really the only real option that we have.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Yes, now that this facility is basically no longer serving its primary purpose, which was to generate power, that's when we started looking at what are some of the benefits that we could gain from removing this. And And really, the benefits relate to dam removal at large. So dam removals have been happening since the 1990s in the United States. I'll say proactive dam removal. So this is planned and intentional dam removal. Dams have obviously been removed and failed ever since we've been building them. But there's a really good resource online. I'm not going to go through it. We attempted to go through it in the last time. But a YouTube video by American Rivers about how removing dams benefits people in rivers. I recommend everybody check that out. But when we started looking at the possible benefits, the overwhelming one is really about restoring fish passes to migratory fish. And there's a whole host of species of fish that had been in this river and had the ability to move upstream and downstream, whether they're just moving seasonally or migrating for their life cycle. But many of them, and as Aaron was saying, after it was installed, there was a photo monitoring system set in place, and data had been collected over the years, and it was a number of years that were finally analyzed all together, and there was a precipitous decline. I mean, first of all, this first column here, where's the pointer on this? Is this the one? Oh, there. This first column here is showing how sort of paltry the numbers were right from the beginning in terms of passage. These species of fish should be really in the thousands in terms of annual rates of passage, and they were really never exceeded the dozens. And then after 2013, when the unit in Ansonia went offline, that changed the way flow was diverted. More flow was actually going over the Kinneytown Dam. That actually distracted fish and prevented them from finding the fishway entrance. And so the numbers actually plummeted even further from 2014 to 2019. So it really confirmed what Kevin Zach had sort of been pointing out to some people for a long time. You know, the fish are not really getting up this. They're getting trapped behind the dam. They're not finding the fishway. And then the monitoring that was done on the fishway eventually confirmed that. So as a result of that, Deep Fisheries Division generated a report in 2022 that came to the conclusion that, you know, given the significant investments upstream, the habitat available upstream, the current state of disrepair and dysfunction of the facility. At the time, it was a low energy output. Now it's a no energy output. The preferred option for restoring fish passage on the Naugatuck is the removal of the Kinneytown Dam, basically declaring the fishway no longer viable. They estimate up to 30 miles for American shad, alewife, blueback herring upstream, populations of 140,000 alewife and blueback herring potentially in the upper reaches, over 70 miles for sea lamprey and American eel with a population of 6,000. As you can see, we were coming nowhere near those kind of potentials. And so this has really been the greatest sort of motivator for this project, and that's where a lot of the funding was initially secured from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, to try to restore these fisheries. And it's really 5 migratory species that are fall in the category of greatest conservation need. That's in Connecticut, but also regionally and federally on the East Coast. And so that's American shad, the blueback herring, sea lamprey, and alewife and American eel. And those are the species that are in the greatest decline and have the greatest potential for rebounding with dam removals like this. And right now across the state, this is the biggest dam removal that's being considered. It has the potential to have the most impact to those 5 fisheries. And it's anticipated that will have a rebounding effect in Long Island Sound at large, because they feed so many different species, whether it's predator fish in Long Island Sound, even striped bass in the river. Seal populations in the Sound can have a benefit from the forage fish, and as well as inland mammals too. So the ecological effect of removing this and restoring those 5 migratory fish runs is potential to be really profound. It's probably going to be the biggest impactful dam removal in the state to date. Additionally, as we've mentioned, there have been multiple dam removals upstream. Many of these done in the early 90s when dam removal was really unheard of. Some of them were done under sort of an emergency situation, but these dams were removed. They were actually part of some of the first research. So they were written about and published in peer-reviewed journals. They became some of the first papers that engineers and scientists across the country and across the state were looking at, like, how does this happen? What happens when you remove a dam? How does the river respond? how does the ecology respond? Some of those very first papers were basically focused on some of these, on Anaconda, Freight Street, Platts Mill. So there is really sort of some of the formative research in dam removal. And of course, the Ting Fishway is the most recent investment upstream. All of these are basically positive events in the restoration of fish passage, but none of them are really going to be realized unless Kinneytown is also addressed. Oh, I just jumped too. So in addition to this, we expect to see improvements in sport fishing opportunities, converting the shallow warm water impoundment into a free-flowing riverine section that can support sport fish. Anglers spend up to $381 million annually in Connecticut. We expect this dam removal to create some of those opportunities in the Naugatuck River Valley. On the upper right-hand corner, that's Jeff Yates, who now works for Trout Unlimited. He's holding right there a trophy salmon, but that's an Atlantic salmon that was stocked in those upper reaches. We're hoping that with this removal, we'll actually get migratory or native or natural fish migrating up there. We don't expect salmon to recolonize the Naugatuck. The water quality is probably too warm and not the best habitat for them. But the other species that I mentioned are the ones we expect to benefit from this. The other potential benefit from this is a reduced flood risk upstream. Obviously, the dam is about 20 feet high. That's now the starting elevation in any given flood. When we remove that dam, that'll drop water surface elevations approximately 20 feet at the dam, and that's a drop that tapers as you get up to about these reaches right off this building. But there are some areas right on the perimeter of the river that are anticipated to become a little bit less likely to be inundated during frequent floods. These potential benefits will require a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis to really quantify this and be able to model and predict it better. It's something we anticipate doing with the engineer that we're looking to bring on board in the next month or so. And also to understand, the Kinneytown Dam was a hydropower dam. It was never designed to provide flood protection to downstream reaches. It doesn't do it. It doesn't have the ability to do that. And now with nobody operating it, it never really, it definitely doesn't have that ability. So removing this aging infrastructure eliminates that risk of failure during a flood event. So in that respect, it's protecting downstream reaches as well. There's also health and safety concerns that we're concerned about. The canal down in Ansonia is constantly accumulating trash and debris, harbors mosquitoes and breeding. It's an eyesore to the neighborhood around North 4th Street. That area is likely to benefit from a potentially extended trail system. We're looking at possibilities of converting the canal into a trail system that ties back in and restores access to the Naugatuck River, so it ties back into the multi-use trail system that exists now in Ansonia and Derby. So this project is meant to create more, restore more public access to the river, especially in those areas of Ansonia. There's also another benefit that isn't often on the minds of most of us, but river managers do understand that dams interrupt that natural flow of sediment. If some of this sediment that's behind the dam is allowed to be passively restored, which is still yet to be determined, there are downstream areas, there are downstream islands and floodplain areas that are all they're all created by river sediment and sort of maintained by that. And so those are areas that will likely receive and can receive and store some of that sediment. Even if the impounded sediment isn't allowed to be passively released, it's just the ability to basically remove that barrier and let the natural transport of sediment return is another benefit of dam removals here and elsewhere where it's being done. And then finally, the other major concern, probably as significant as the fish passage itself, is the removal of an aging structure that no longer has an owner that can afford to do anything with it. Without a responsible owner and revenue generation, this is just degrading in place. As we saw in a recent storm event, this just happened, and that event several weeks ago. This is the juxtaposition. I was talking to somebody before this, before the talk here, but this is that bank that blew out. This is the gatehouse here. This is where the canal begins. And that, that event happened. That was not something we predicted. It's not something we even knew was a vulnerable part of that area. But if enough of that bank had been eroded out, this could have caused the whole canal to breach. And that's a huge concern of us. But the other big concern for us is moving further downstream as you get closer to the Ansonia Dam. The rail line moves from being up on top of the canal to basically being way down at the foot of the dam. And so this dam is now impounding. This is an earthen section of the Copon Dam that has about 15 or so feet of water that's holding back from the railroad, the active railroad there. This dam, as you can see from the photo here, has been allowed to become a forest. It's basically been a part of the dam structure that was never acknowledged in the FERC records. It had never been inspected. It was never maintained. It was never considered to be something that had to be looked at and had to be monitored. No earthen dam today is allowed to have any trees growing on it because all it takes is a strong wind and a heavy rain to rip a dam out, and it pulls all its roots with it, and then it creates a gaping hole and a potential failure spot. So those are factors that have been sort of ignored for the entire life of this facility, and it presents a very hazardous situation for us that we need to rectify. And as Aaron had alluded to, we had hired an engineer to do an inspection. They came back with a recommendation to lower water surface as fast as you could, as much as you could. And so we recently had a contractor out notching the spillway right in front of the Ansonia Dam, and that brought the water levels down about 2 feet. That took them off of this edge right here, which is very relieving to us. It did expose some sediments that are up in this part of the impoundment. But basically it has sort of alleviated the most significant concern, at least in the short term, but it's still a situation that can't be left as is. And so it is something that is high on the list of issues that we're trying to work through as this project progresses. No. I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Thank you. So, so back in the summer of 2022, we became aware that there was funding available through NOAA, through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And we, in partnership with NVCOG, applied to NOAA's Restoring Fish Passage Through Berry Removal program. We had support of the dam owners, the governor, the Connecticut federal delegation, State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Environmental Protection Agency, and a host of others who really see this as a really valuable project, and ultimately received an award of $15 million to begin the dam removal project. So here's just a general outline of what that project consists of. So we intend through the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank, which is an agency that or a nonprofit that holds title to properties that have environmental issues while they can be dealt with. So we plan to acquire the project through the land bank, then conduct engineering design of the dam removal, work with FERC to decommission the Kinneytown Dam and ultimately remove it. There's sewer infrastructure that belongs to the city of or town of Seymour that is basically above the dam, encased in sediment. So when the dam gets removed and that sediment is either removed or mobilized, those sewer lines are going to be exposed. So that's a sort of an additional project that we have to take on before the dam can be removed. And then at the end, restore the Naugatuck River. And we really, one of the goals here is to develop recreational access to the river for residents and visitors. And throughout, we're going to be having these bi-monthly meetings. So, stay tuned. We're, hopefully going to have an engineer on board next time around and be able to share some more details as we go. So how are we funding this? So we have, like I said, $15 million from NOAA. That was matched by $1.6 million from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We've received assistance through the Environmental Protection Agency through a targeted brownfield assessment. So they're actually out doing the environmental sampling and testing to inform how we're going to be able to remove the dam. We also received $3.42 million of congressionally directed spending for that sewer replacement project, and then another $270,000 from DEEP for recreational trail design on the property. And we have another $1.7 million pending in congressionally directed spending again for that sewer project. So totally right now, committed and pending, we have just under $23 million for this project. So I'm just going to go through some updates. So this is all new material since you were all here last. So as Paul mentioned and detailed, this is what that Copon Dam looked like. So these are really mature trees on top of the dam. There was less than 2 feet of freeboard, so basically the room between the top of the water level and the top of the dam in some places was as little as 2 feet, which is a little scary. And these trees, some of these, if a windstorm had come and blown one over, would probably take a root ball big enough to breach the entire dam. So that was one big concern we had. And then upstream, there's this unvegetated area where there's obvious erosion taking place. We were concerned that there had been overtopping, and I think we do see some indication that there may have been overtopping of the dam in the past. So here's that report that Paul discussed that said, we really need to find a way to reduce the water level as quickly as possible. So just a few weeks ago, we had crews out there cutting a notch. So you can see on the left the notch they cut in a weir. So basically the spillway where the water flows from Copon into the Naugatuck River. And they cut the notch that you can see on the right, and that lowered the water level a few feet. That lowered, basically, exposed some extra shoreline, gave some room along the dam, extra freeboard along the dam that would prevent our immediate concerns anyway. At the northern end of the pond, it did expose some shoreline along the section that we were really concerned about here. And this is that delta of sediment that's at the northern end of Copon. So, we feel pretty confident that we've, at least temporarily lowered the likelihood of a catastrophic breach that we were really concerned about. So that was sort of the final thing that the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank wanted to see before they acquired the property. So we've done land title surveys, we've done a lot of property research, and that safety mitigation project was really the last thing. So our expected closing date for the land bank to take possession of the property is mid-December at this point. So another thing that's sort of wrapped up in the last couple months is the first round of environmental sampling and analysis that the Environmental Protection Agency conducted. It included sampling for hazardous building materials in the facility structures and sampling of sediments in both the Kinneytown impoundment and Copon, along with background sampling in the river far upstream of the impoundment and downstream in Derby. A draft report has just become available, and we've posted it on our website. So if anybody's interested, you can find it there. We didn't see any real surprises. The initial results showed the presence of some chemicals and metals across all of the sample locations that would be expected in a former industrial river system, and from just stormwater runoff even. So results are being reviewed right now and analyzed by our team, by EPA and Connecticut DEP, to determine the appropriate next steps for further sampling and analysis. And ultimately, this information is going to be used to develop a sediment management plan and will be really critical to inform the safe removal of the dam and the restoration of the river. So that sewer relocation project is moving along. We have engineers on board. We've been working through an alternatives analysis. So these are the two siphons that are above Kinneytown Dam that are going to have to be removed, but all of that flow is going to then have to be rerouted to make it all the way to the wastewater treatment plant, which is here below Kinneytown. So they've narrowed our options down to a few ways to reroute that flow down either along 115 or on the slope between 115 and the rail, and then down, potentially through the canal and then under the rail and across the river here. So the idea is to take the flow from these two upstream siphons, reroute it to an enlarged third siphon downstream. So they're still doing data collection. We've talked to the town. We've talked to Connecticut DEP, trying to figure out what the best way to do this is, the most efficient way to do it. So that project is moving along.
So right now, the sewer dumps into the river?
No, so right now it's going across. So this is a hill here. So the flow from this neighborhood is going through this siphon and then down along to the wastewater treatment plant. This neighborhood here, it's going this way into this siphon and down to the.
So that runs through the side of it?
It does. It goes underneath the impoundment. Yep, it's a pipe. And the big thing we've been spending a lot of time on is getting an engineer on board that's going to oversee the entire project. So we received 2 proposals from firms that we pre-qualified, and right now we will be beginning negotiations with one of those, and we're hoping to have them on board in the next month or so. This is just sort of a list of all of the things that they're going to be doing, but they're really going to be the drivers of this project. We're going to rely on them to do a lot of the data collection and the field work that they're going to need to do that, do the engineering analysis of flows and everything, and then develop the design, do all of the permitting for it, and eventually help us go out to bid for construction and oversee that construction. And the last update I'm going to give is not actually our project. This is a Connecticut DOT and Metro North Railroad project, but this breach that Paul was showing earlier is actually in the embankment that impounds the canal. So it is actually part of the facility. So DOT did an emergency repair on this and worked in basically less than a month to create a road across to be able to bring equipment in and material in. And this line was reopened just on Monday. So that project's done, but it has, really improved our access to the canal. And you all may have seen trucks coming and going from the driveway across from the Burger Shack. That was that project that was going on. It was not part of the dam removal project. We were thinking that people might have thought that we'd started removing the dam already, but that's not the case.
I have a question.
Yes.
So that work that was done on an emergency basis, is that going to help your project for access for vehicles?
It definitely helped us with access on that side. Yep. And I think it also showed DOT and Metro North they replaced this just exactly the way it was before. So in another storm like we had in August, there's no guarantee that that's not going to happen again, and it's actually likely to happen again in another storm like that. So we have not solved the problem. We just put a Band-Aid on it, and I think removal of the dam is really critical to the safety of the rail line in this area.
On the work they did they clad the embankments with riprap?
They did, yep. So here's our provisional timeline. A lot's gonna really come into focus once we have an engineer on board and they start collecting data and really lay out a more detailed timeline. But this fall, we expect to have that engineer on board. We're gonna begin the design and engineering work. And we expect the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank to acquire the property as well this fall. Next year, we're gonna continue the design, do additional environmental assessment that EPA is working on figuring out what to do on. We're going to continue these meetings throughout, and we're hoping to begin the FERC decommissioning process in 2025. In 2026, we're hoping to have the design completed and decommissioning well underway, and begin the deconstruction. And then hopefully in 2027, we'll be able to start enjoying a restored Naugatuck River. So with that, we're happy to take questions.
Before you take questions, so we're just gonna have Aaron and Paul repeat your questions because some of your neighbors are online and they can't hear. So they're not, pseudo barring, they're just repeating what people online hear your questions.
Yeah, who owns the dam right now?
So right now, it's owned by Kinneytown Hydro, but Kinneytown Hydro was purchased by a company called Trimaran, and they're in Washington State. It was previously owned by a company called Hydroland, which was an investment firm that thought they could buy a bunch of dams and sort of fix them up and produce energy. And I think, they had bought a portfolio of dams from Enel, who was the owner before then. It was a multinational corporation. They bought a package of these dams, and I think, there were a couple in that package that were, like this, where, they were really not good purchases,
Is there a plan to remove the whole dam, completely, or?
You want to take that one?
Sure. So the question is there a plan to remove the whole dam completely? I mean, that is the ultimate intent, to remove that entire structure. What happens with Coe Pond and that earthen section still remains to be seen. There's some, there's site constraints there that don't make it clear as to what exactly we can do with that area. We still need to study Ansonia Dam better. We don't have plans from it, where it was originally designed. So the engineer that we're bringing on board will be looking more closely at that section to figure out what Coe Pond will look like when this structure is out, because this is the structure that feeds, provides most of the flow into Coe Pond, right? So that's the unknown part of this project at this point. In this picture, it's right here. There's a bridge under this railroad right here. This is where water is diverted into. There's a gatehouse here that is mostly closed, but 2 or 3 of the channels are partly open. And so that's allowing water to flow through at a sort of a slow and controlled rate into this canal and all the way down into there. So this is the primary source of water for Coe Pond. That person was.
Number one, why do I have orange markers on my property? I don't see them.
Yep.
And, what's getting happened to the, canal?
So, yep. So why do I have orange markers on my property, and what's going to happen to the canal? How do you?
I can explain the orange markers. So as part of the acquisition process, we did do a full property survey. And that is what those orange markers are. Those are the property boundaries of the Kinneytown property.
I don't think that is right. It's a big thing.
Okay.
And,
We'd be happy to provide the surveys to you if you'd like to take a look at what they.
so he will own the property now.
So during the dam removal, we intend for the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank to own the property. And then after, our intent was always, depending on what happens is to make it available to the public. And that would likely be, by giving it back to the towns. We haven't really determined that yet, but that will be part of the whole planning process. So the canal, we're really not sure at this point yet. We don't know. Right now, the water level has been lowered in the canal. There is some exposed sediment, so there might be a smell temporarily. But long term, that's part of the design process that we're going to be determining.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vision right now is to convert the canal into a trail. So it would be dry, but it would be a usable amenity. That's one of the options that's being considered right now.
Do we know how many acres the lake at the Kinneytown Dam and Pound, how many acres is that lake right now?
It's at its maximum, the acreage of the Cove Pond is about 40 acres. I don't know the acreage of the Kinneytown.
We did know it. I don't know.
It's about a mile and a half long, but I don't remember the acreage of that.
Now, obviously, when the dam's removed, it'll be channelized. It'll look like a river out here more than it looks like a lake.
Well, it'll look more like the river downstream of the dam. This is still influenced by, but yes, under the bridge, yes, that's more like what the river will look like in the impoundment now. Yeah.
My question is, with the width being tremendously narrow,
Yeah.
the new stream, are you going to remediate the banks and plant plants that are going to be conducive for shading the river, keep the water temperature down?
Right. So the question is, what work's going to be done in the impoundment with the dam when the dam's removed and the river's restored in that area? And yeah, this it remains to be seen exactly, but this will be narrower, right? So the normal wetted width, we would say, or the bankful width, would leave some areas of floodplain on either side. This all fits into the bigger picture of what are we doing about the sediment behind the dam. So if the sediment needs to be removed, then it would be actively removed. Then this whole floodplain would be regraded. It might require topsoil to be brought in. More than likely, it would be planted with whatever materials left behind. It would be planted with, seed mixtures, herbaceous plugs, live stakes is often what we do along riverbanks, or trees and shrubs on the floodplain. Yeah, so planting is a typical thing done with restoration of these.
So there's a provision in the budget for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a significant amount of funding going into the actual work to restore the river. Sure.
2005, I was a street monitor for that area. Ron Skurat, HBA, was appointed to be the director of the Southern Valley. He was Southern Valley steward of the Northern Valley, working with Housatonic Valley. My section of the river ran from Maple Street in Ansonia all the way up to 42 Bridge in Beacon Falls. So I know every inch of that river there. I've explored it very closely. So I have a lot of issues about, but we had a lot of problems with the river back then. That was almost 20 years ago. They're still here. One of them, the biggest one, is the sediment there. And I have a friend that worked at Faro Corporation, and she worked there for many years, and she had access to many of correspondence. And she said back in the 1960s, 1 million pounds of copper, chromium discharged into the rivers annually. 1 million pounds, because there were about 30 to 40 copper and brass mills up and down that river. That's not including the iron and the other businesses in that area. So there's a lot of stuff there. And in 1899, it was determined that by the state that the river already reached its maximum pollution levels. So you can see we've come a long way since then, but most of that stuff is still buried there.
One
They've
thing I would say to
actually-
that, I'll interject just a comment and I'll let you continue, is that in 1955, this dam blew out. And so for better or for worse, a lot of sediment, 55, a lot of that sediment washed downstream. That's not to say that the sediment there doesn't have any of that legacy in it. It probably does, but the management of sediment is going to be a huge, component of this project going forward.
Many Nebraska companies were still in existence until the 70s, so that's another 20 years or so. So it's still accumulating. They were thought at one time, the DEP, that they could actually mine the mud. It's mine quality of arsenic, copper, lead, and other metal ions, and also acids. So my concern is that's about a mile and a half from one end to the other. What are you going to do with all that stuff? You can't just let the river flow, break the dam, and that's all going to go down. So coat all of the rocks down below, and then flood. It won't flood, but it'll cover. It'll go down to the sound. I mean, it's going to keep going. So that's a big issue that we've got to solve. And one of the solutions is maybe to put it in Copan and make a field there. But I don't think the residents are going to want to work and live next to that stuff there. That's going to be expensive. The one up in Housatonic, when the PCBs are up there, that cost millions of dollars. And there's no General Electric to pay for it this time around.
Yeah, agreed. Sediment is the primary issue here. We were fully aware. The other problem, though, is if we left this dam in place, what does that result in? A failure that's uncontrolled release, right? Yeah, so
the other one is access to the river.
Yeah.
Route 8 on one side, you can't get there. There's private homes on one side. The train tracks there, you can't cross them. They just send an email to everybody in Valley Sentinel, don't cross the tracks because it's against the law. You're talking about going in the canal, you'd have to go underneath the bridge there, and I don't know where you would park. There's no parking at any of those in those areas. So another problem is access. That was a problem in 2005. How do you access the river? They want to do kayaking and boating, but it's not very deep there. You can't kayak down by Ansonia.
No, so agreed. Both of these, for one thing, construction access is going to be a challenge. That much we're aware of. This is probably going to be a primary point of access. Lots of activity is going to happen here. But after removal, this bridge and this canal may become the new public access, where there's no water under that bridge. It would actually be pedestrian access underneath it. Same with down in Lansonia, there's the rail bridge that's right in front of the spillway. And if that powerhouse is removed, that spillway is removed, that can then become a point of access too, some kind of a trail system built around the flow that's coming out there. I don't think Copan's going to be a completely dry situation. There is a stream coming in from Colony Pond. That's going to be some kind of a feature. So that all that needs to be taken into account as we move forward. And you're not wrong about any of these things. It's just telling you just
there's no parking. You can't park at here at this lot because this is used for senior activities and so on. Some days you can't get a spot. Where will you park? You can't park on the other side at South Main. Access would have to be Ansonia or downtown Seymour. But again, the parking issue has to be settled because right now they're complaining about parking in Seymour.
Yeah. You want to speak to parking?
Yeah, and I mean, that's all going to be part of the design and the whole planning process that we're going to go through. We'll definitely take your comment, and that it is a good one. That we are starting to think about those access issues though, and we have been talking with DOT and Metro North about replacing, if they replace these structures after they're no longer needed, to ensure that those, whatever they replace them with, does allow pedestrian access at least.
The last thing is the fish going up the river. Have you surveyed what's coming up in Ansonia? Route 34 bridge over to the Maple Street Bridge that's been channelized, widened, and access has been not denied the river because of the Army Corps of Engineers. But we've got global warming, we've got riprap onto the banks, and whenever it rains, hot rocks comes out, warms the river, the wider river, more sun. I don't see any fish coming up that river. I see carp, sunfish, not sunfish, but suckers, but I don't see how a trout or shad could come up from the 30-foot bridge into where the Coal Pond Dam is. That area, it's just channelized. And have you surveyed any of that?
So I'll show you right here.
So the question's about are fish actually making it to the dam? And yes, we know for a fact they're making it to the dam. All this footage is actually at the pond, or at the pool right below the dam. These are all fish that were just videoed.
They were migrating?
Yeah, migrating or moving. Not all of them are migratory fish, but there's
Well, you can see
schools.
what's coming up in Sonia, and then compare that to what's going to come up past the dam.
Yeah, so I completely agree that what was done in Ansonia, the flood control project there, is damaged habitat and made fish passage itself a challenge. But Deep Fisheries is aware, and they fully acknowledge that fish are getting past that reach and they're getting to this dam, but they're not getting into the fishway and they're not getting over the fishway. So I think this is really the big issue. It's not so much the passage is not so much a concern down in the Ansonia flood control project.
And then the other is the Tinky Dam. They put a fish ladder there.
Yeah.
$10 million, didn't work. It came back, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee. I know the dam's gotta go, but these issues have to be solved. It's gonna be very expensive.
So I agree with you that fishways provide no guarantee, but dam removals do when it comes to fish passage. It's the 100% certain option for fish passage is removing the dam. Fishways, that was state of the art when it was put in place, and it didn't work from day one. And it really started failing after the hydropower operation started a hard decline. Yeah, and Tingy required an expensive fix afterwards, but Deep now believes that that's a functioning fishway. It has much better features than this one does, and it's only going up a 10-foot dam as opposed to a 25-foot dam. So it has a lot more going for it. It's a much shorter, it's a natural style, so it has better passage conditions, and it's much shorter pathway as opposed to the serpentine pathway that that this fishway has. So that one's anticipated to function and serve well, as long as we can get fish to it. Yeah, thank you.
That wastewater treatment work you're talking about,
So we are intending to, since our project is causing that, we we intend to use, get grants and be able to pay for that without local taxpayer dollars. Who's going to pay for the sewer work? Is that going to be paid for by taxpayers? And we don't intend to ask the town at all for funding for that.
Route 115, just repaved 2 years ago. I hate to see it. We dug up to put a sewer line in there.
Yes, without fail, as soon as you pave a road, utilities come through. It's the surefire way to get utilities replaced on your road is to pave it. I agree. Yes.
You move the number of dams on the dog stuff. Do you have a particular contractor that you use, or does it just go out to bid?
So all of our work goes out to competitive bid, and we use a qualifications-based procedure. Our funding requires us to do that. So I'm not sure who. Well, I do know a little bit about who did the previous dam.
Do that work?
Who?
O&G?
No, O&G I don't think did any of that. Well, actually, I can't even say that. The 90/90 dam removals, I have no idea who the contractors were. I could find out. My colleague was involved in those projects, but I don't know. They're not a company that does this now. There are other contractors around that have specialized in this type of work.
That was my question. Are there specialized contractors that do this?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are specialized contractors that do this. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't repeat the question again. The question was, it is? Okay.
That film that was just shown there with the city kind of struggling and some schools,
That was all shot at the foot of the dam, yeah, by Kevin Zach, who I mentioned earlier. And I think he's still doing that documentation work. Yes.
Funding, is that enough to take care of the project, or is it?
Right now, we don't think we have enough money right now to do the project, and we're still looking for additional funding. We're going back out for additional grant funding through NOAA very soon, as soon as they release their program. No, good question. Then we'll try to get other money. Like I said, this is a real regional priority, and we are working, very hard to get this done. Yes.
So I know you said there's no intention to go to the taxpayers for money, but is there a possibility that you are going to go after? And I'm not even sure you can really answer that because we all come out, but our mayors and our selectmen don't show up. So like, I also feel there's no support on that end. So do you know if there is a possibility that taxpayers are going to take this burden on?
Well, I think if we asked the town to do this or to fund it, they probably wouldn't. So, we don't intend to ask them. That's the best I can give you. Yes.
There's a dam up in, Toledo Road. East Mitchell Forest, they have to take that one down. It's gonna cost $10 million. So they're not gonna take 2 dams down. Okay.
No, we understand that we have a hill to climb on the funding, but I think we are building momentum on that.
Other examples of a similar dam being removed, or any process? I mean, would you cut a notch slowly like you did with Coal Pond? Let the water down slowly over time, or is that? I'm getting ahead, but I'm curious.
Have your grandson get you on YouTube and start Googling. There's plenty of videos of like really big dam removals that happen out west that have some pretty dramatic things. One, some involve explosives. This isn't going to go that route, but yeah, no, it almost never happens. On big dams out west, they've shown excavators with pneumatic hammers, or hydraulic hammers mounted on them on barges in front of the dam, chipping it down gradually, moving side to side. This happens to have a conduit going through the powerhouse that can be used to divert flow and bring water down. Sometimes, if not on a barge, it's just done with like filled. So they'll bring in riprap, create a ramp, get an excavator down, and start chipping away and creating a small notch to lower and sequentially give you more access as you draw down water. So it's kind of a slow and controlled process. There's a lot to be thought of before they figure out exactly how they're going to physically take down the dam. Highly unlikely, for a couple reasons. There's a railroad, there's a sewer line, there's a highway. All those things are kind of.
There's a sewer line in that dam?
No, the sewer line if it's underwater, it would be in this photo we're looking at here. But there's a sewer line running parallel to Route 8, and there'll be a new sewer line running parallel to the river going this way. So a lot of those things factor into that. I mean, explosives are actually very controlled and can be targeted really well. I'm just saying that most dam removals on the East Coast especially aren't using that kind of dramatic reel. But there's a lot of good examples of you can find online.
A few years ago, blocked it up. There's a little valve up in top of it, open it up, and they had a big solution.
At this dam.
At the siphon, the downstream siphon.
Okay.
A few years ago.
Yep.
Siphon failure. Okay.
I'm going to think now a quarter century out. People are talking about public access tonight. Because of the topography we have here, we got Route 8 obviously on the west side. We got very steep embankments on the east side. Has anybody thought about an intermediate rail stop between the Ansonia station and the Seymour station to bring people here? Because unfortunately, people come by automobile. If we gotta put a 2-acre parking lot in, it might be cheaper to have a small rail stop. On the Hudson line, I understand there's a stop somewhere west of Poughkeepsie where they stop to let hikers, I don't know. That might be something I think about.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and I do know one person that has thought about that, and that's our transportation planning director that that has talked about that. And historically, there was a stop in the summer in High Grove in the Naugatuck State Forest, where there was a park that people from the city would come up to picnic, and so I think that's a great idea. I think that's something we'll.
They brought all that material in already to repair the rail line. That might be a logical place.
So the rail line got repaired just the same way it was before. So that conceivably could just happen again.
Yeah, and that was that was an extreme storm. So, but yes.
That said, the bank was stabilized, so they armored it with rock. I think it had tow armor before. I think now it's a bit more armored than it was before, but as an emergency repair, they had to replace in kind. So they weren't allowed to do anything dramatically different than what it was before.
A little more back, when Ed Warwitz was in charge of the economic, all that, the river keepers, he said that in the summer, late summer, 75% of the water coming down was from the sewage plants. The rest was natural. That's interesting to see if the sewage plants.
I wouldn't doubt on weeks like this where we haven't had rain in a month. I'll bet you a lot of the flow here is. Luckily, they treat the effluent a lot better than they used to. But
you have to put signs up anywhere not to eat the fish, no matter what. You never can guarantee that you can get rid of all the heavy metals.
Right. Yes.
I recently heard on a program on WITC out of Bridgeport, they covered the valley pretty good now. Mayor Cassetti was on there. And I don't know if you're aware, he's planning on using one of the private bridges down by where the barrels used to be, and having that as a truck entrance onto Route 8. Heard anything about that?
I don't know anything about that.
South end of the project. No, it's not a footbridge, it's a vehicle. Like where Burns has their yard down there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this thought has any validity, but I mean, that's what he's talking about, open up that 60-acre site on the east side of the Naugatuck River, like the Eagle Hose Company.
I had not.
There and somehow merge onto Route 8.
Okay.
Something you may want to just look at, how it ties into. I don't.
So you need to restate that. Okay.
Make a sub that for those who have a louder base a little bit, I can pick it up.
Okay.
Whereas officers spoken, it's hard to hear.
Yes.
Maybe in future meetings, they should go select around here.
Good, bro. Drag them in.
Yes.
In your earlier presentation, you mentioned that the DEP was asked to do an assessment of the dam along the coast on there. Did they ever do that? Did the results ever come back?
The EPA did an environmental assessment, and that the draft report is on our website.
So also so Deep Dam Safety did a site walk, and then FERC also did a site walk. They both issued letters. DOT did their own site walk. So all the agencies that have like a stake in this, whether it's property or operation, all walked that Copon embankment themselves. And then NVCOG hired the engineer to do an official dam safety inspection. So that's the one that came back to us with the recommendation of you need to lower water to deal with this.
He tested for metals in there before
Yeah.
it's covered.
Yes.
So they might have to be excavated too.
Yeah, there's sediment in there that will likely need to be remediated. Sediment's a huge cost driver for this project, yeah. It's the reason why we don't think we have enough right now.
Well,
Yes.
the money doesn't go here, it's gonna go to Arizona, right? Our federal money, we might as well go for it.
Yes.
I was wondering if there's any way to tell what part of the dam got washed out by the 55 flood, and what's old and what's new? Is there an old one? Any ideas?
So actually, yeah, I do have, so the dam actually did not span bank to bank before 1955. It looked like this. So the eastern half of the dam was actually, land. So the dam stretched here. After that 55, so this is what blew out in the 55 flood. This completely washed out. And there are pictures. I did see pictures of what it looked like after the washout. Maybe next time we'll put them in the slide. But it was afterwards. It was raised a little bit, and it then spanned bank to bank. So that's basically where the that bend in the dam is now. So, whoops, too far. So this is the piece here. So they added that after the flood. Yep. Any other questions, or are we itching to go watch the Yankees? Yes.
So our next meeting will be January?
So it'll probably be I think December is our schedule right now, but with the holidays, we don't have a date set right now. So we will set a date though, and all of you that have signed up or signed up online, you'll get a notice. And we've been trying to get the word out as much as possible. So if you can help us spread the word for the next one, that would be great. Our original plan was to bounce back and forth. So I think that's what the plan will be, is to be in Ansonia for the next one.
You may want to contact WICC and have it put on a public service message before the next meeting.
Good idea. We'll do that. Yes. You're welcome. Any requests for the next one?
Like clamp by.
Hey, all right. Yes.
I haven't hit a final bill as of why they walking. With a project of this magnitude, why can't the first selectman, mayors of all the towns involved be here? At least one at a time. You're here tonight in Seymour. Where's our first selectman? Go to Ansonia. Where's the mayor?
They were present for some of the kickoff events that happened in the very beginning, but can't speak to why they're not here tonight.
Yeah, they were all invited.
I think there's something going on somewhere where they all be there for the photo op. Or Anne Marie, I guess we can
All right. So thanks everyone that were online. We're just wrapping up here, and thanks everyone that's here for being here tonight.